You ever wake up one morning thinking it's just going to be another quiet day? Coffee on the porch lake, calm as glass birds doing their usual gossip, and then realize you're about to step straight into a sitcom you didn't sign up for. That was me, right there on a Friday morning in early spring. I'd just poured my first cup when I heard laughter coming from the woods, high-pitched, entitled laughter, the kind that doesn't belong to hikers or campers. The kind that sounds like it already owns the land it's standing on. I walked down the trail, mug in hand, and stopped dead when I saw 6 women setting up folding tables and floral banners across the porch of my cabin. My cabin. They had matching shirts that said Mountain Peak Ladies Society, a Bluetooth speaker pumping out smooth jazz, and a banner stretched across my railing that read, Weekend Wellness Retreat. Before I could even process the madness, one of them turned around, a woman in a hat so wide it could block satellite signals, and said with a bright smile, "You're early. The caterer's truck can park by the trees." I took a slow sip of coffee and said as calmly as I could, "Ma'am, this is my property." She blinked, looked at me like I'd claimed the sky, and said, "Oh, you must be mistaken. This cabin belongs to the community association. We rented it for the weekend." Her name was Marjorie Quinn, president of the Ridgepoint Lake HOA, a woman who treated her clipboard like the Constitution. She waved a printed reservation form in my face, my cabin photo on top, her name scribbled under event coordinator. It would have been funny if it weren't so insane. Within minutes, her crew was unloading coolers and decorations like they were staging a royal banquet. I told them politely to pack up and leave. She smirked, said, "You can't interfere with an HOA-approved function," and dialed the sheriff's office right there in front of me, claiming a trespasser was refusing to leave community grounds. Now here's where the story starts to twist. When the deputies showed up, Marjorie puffed herself up like she was about to receive an award. But the second deputy Rhodes saw me. He grinned and said, "Morning, counselor. How's retirement treating you? I used to be a prosecutor, and in small towns, people remember that." Marjorie's face drained of color. Rhodes looked around, sighed, and told her, "Ma'am, this property isn't HOA land. You're trespassing." The look on her face, pure confusion melting into horror, was worth the price of admission. They gave her until sundown to clear out. She left with her little army, kicking up dust and muttering something about ungrateful men and their loopholes. That night, curiosity got the best of me. I looked up the HOA's website and found something that froze me mid-sip of whiskey. There it was. Ridgepoint Lake Managed Retreats. A sub-page listing my cabin and 4 others as available rentals for members' private events. My photos, my lakes, my name replaced by community-managed property. I realized this wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. Marjorie wasn't just overstepping, she was trying to annex the whole lakeside under HOA control. The next morning, I drove to the Marina Cafe where my neighbor Dale, an old fisherman, was reading the paper. I asked if he'd seen the site. He frowned and said, "Yeah, she told me she was just updating the listings for maintenance transparency." I signed some form for her last month. My stomach dropped. That's when I knew she'd conned him too. Later that day, I visited Walter Lang, the resort's original owner, a retired forest ranger who'd been talking about selling for years. He looked tired, older than I remembered. When I asked if he'd signed anything with the HOA, he sighed and pulled out 2 contracts, one real, one forged. Marjorie's signature was right there on the fake one, claiming partial management rights. I left his office knowing exactly what I had to do. I called an old friend, Robert Blake, a real estate attorney who owed me a favor or two. I told him I wanted to buy the resort quietly, completely, before Marjorie realized it was slipping out of her hands. "You serious?" he said. "Dead serious," I told him. "Make it airtight." By sunset, we had a deal drawn up under a holding company, and Walter, bless his tired heart, said son. That's not just a sale. That's my piece. 48 hours later, Ridgepoint Lake Resort was mine. Every dock trail and cabin Marjorie had claimed now belonged legally to me. I didn't tell her right away I wanted her to dig her own hole first. And boy, did she ever. The following weekend, she showed up again with an army of SUVs, caterers, and a tent truck. I stood on the porch sipping coffee like it was front-row popcorn at a theater show. She strutted up the driveway in a white sundress clipboard raised high. "We're setting up," she declared. "I have full authorization." I asked authorization from who? She smiled that politician smile and said, "The HOA, of course. We have temporary jurisdiction over this property." That's when Robert pulled up sharp suit folder in hand. "Afternoon," he said, handing her the deed transfer papers. "I represent the new owner of Ridgepoint Lake Resort." Marjorie laughed until she saw my name signed at the bottom. The sound she made wasn't human, it was disbelief breaking in half. She shouted that it was fraud, that I'd stolen the land, until Deputy Rhodes showed up again and said, "We just checked county records, ma'am. It's real." You could feel the air shift. Her friends started folding chairs, pretending not to know her. The bubble burst right there on the grass banners, flapping lake wind blowing through her perfect hair. She tried to salvage dignity, said, "You can't block an HOA road." I smiled and pointed to the new sign I'd installed. "Private property, no HOA access beyond this point." She stared at it like it was written in another language. The next week, the whole town buzzed. People were whispering at the diner at the hardware store about the HOA president who tried to host a retreat on land she didn't own. Then came the county investigation. Turns out she'd been funneling association funds into her event coordination account for months. They called an emergency HOA meeting. I wasn't planning to go, but curiosity won. The hall was packed. Marjorie stood at the front in a bright blue blazer, trying to sound calm as she said, "There's been a misunderstanding." But the treasurer cut her off. "There's no misunderstanding," he said. "You transferred funds to your personal account. You lied about property rights." I stepped forward, dropped an envelope on the table and said, "If anyone needs receipts, here's every fake contract she sent, including the one to my fake email." Gasps filled the room. It was over before the vote even finished. She was stripped of her title on the spot, voice trembling as she said, "You set me up." I told her quietly, "No, Marjorie. You set yourself up when you mistook control for leadership." That night, I sat on my porch again. Same cup of coffee, same lake. But everything felt different. Peaceful. I'd won, sure, but more than that. I'd seen how far people will go when they let power convince them they're untouchable. A week later, she showed up one last time. Drove up slow headlights cutting through the dusk. She looked smaller somehow. No makeup armor, no clipboard shield. She walked up to the new gate and said softly, "It used to be beautiful here." I nodded. "Still is," I said. "You just stopped seeing it." She handed me an envelope through the gate, signed papers releasing all HOA claims, and whispered, "I never hated you. I just hated that you didn't need permission." Then she turned and left. The next morning, I hung a new sign below the main one. "Welcome veterans and families. Free weekend retreats." Locals came to help me plant flowers around it. Kids laughed by the dock, and for the first time in months, the only sound over the lake was happiness. As the sun went down, I sat there, feet dangling off the edge of the pier, thinking how strange it is that peace and control look the same from a distance until you get close enough to tell which one's real. So yeah, that's how the HOA president who tried to rent my cabin ended up losing her crown, and how a quiet man just looking for some peace wound up owning an entire resort. Guess the moral's simple: don't play power games on land you don't own. Especially when the guy next door used to write the laws you're breaking. Now I'll ask you, if you'd been in my shoes, would you have let it slide or fought back? Drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from, and let's hear what you would have done.